Up next, we have a panel discussion titled Agile and Adaptive Practices in Securing Critical Environments. For this, we have Mr. Biju Hamid, who's the Director of Technology, Infrastructure and Operations from Dubai Airports. Joining him would be Dr. Jassim Haji, who's the President of Artificial Intelligence Society Bahrain, and Yosi Shavit, who's the Head of ICS Cybersecurity Department from the Ministry of Environmental Protection, Israel. Biju, over to you.
Thanks, Zaman, and Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon to everyone. Let me welcome you all to today's panel on the topic Agile and Adaptive Practices in Securing Critical Environments. Firstly, let me start off by thanking the organizers of the virtual conference for giving myself and my co-panelists the opportunity to share our professional thoughts and views on the topic. The UAE Cybersecurity Council and His Excellency Dr. Mohammed Al-Kuwaiti for the endorsement, and to all of you in the audience for taking the time to attend today's session. Now, I've been told that this platform is very interactive and unique, and that the bio of each of the panelists will be made available to you on the side panes as we go through the session. So I will therefore skip the usual pleasantries of the introductions. Kicking off today's panel, I'd like to share with you a quote I came across a little while ago in the Verizon Data Breach Report. It quoted that some organizations will be a target regardless of what they do, but most become a target because of what they do. And as you know, critical infrastructure entities form the backbone of nations and their economies. They drive progress and help sustain capabilities of nation states and are made up of organizations and operate in areas of transportation, law enforcement, utilities, oil and gas, and defense, to name a few. While information technology, IT, is the focus area in corporate entities, industrial entities are an amalgamation of standard IT and its counterpart, OT, which is otherwise known as operational technology, and even more commonly referred to as ICS or SCADA. Now, for this, there is a bigger emphasis on this latter, with support for that supports the core industrial functions of most of these critical infrastructure entities. Although the security of critical infrastructure is considered part of national security programs, there are considerable gaps in between what is expected and what is actually in place. With that, let me move on to our panelists to see what they think about these challenges and how it can be addressed. I'll leave the floor open, and we can pick up points depending as we go. So, considering the increase in cyber attacks that we've seen in the past few months, and in fact in the recent years against critical infrastructure, such as the Colonial Pipeline attack and attacks that we've seen time and again on national and state agencies through the use of ransomware, droppers, and other TTPs. Do you feel that the importance given to cybersecurity in critical infrastructure environments has changed in the recent past, and if so, how?
You ask me? Okay, thank you very much for inviting me here. It's a great honor to be here today. About your question. So first of all, I'd like to add to the Colonial Pipeline event you just mentioned another significant cyber attack in this year, actually February 2021, attempt of poisoning a water facility in Florida. The attacker raised the level of sodium hydroxide in drinking water from 100 ppm, part per millions, to 11,000. It's 10 times what is allowed. If successful, the attack would causing damage to public health and even death of people. Fortunately, the operation manager of the site saw the intrusion attempt and was, as it was occurring, and he stopped it on an HMI station. To answer your question, so we all know that cyber defense in critical infrastructure factories is the soft belly of every country. UAE, Israel, every country in the world. This is the soft belly. Therefore, the importance of cyber protection for critical infrastructure has increased recently. In our Ministry of Environmental Protection, we have already established ICS cybersecurity department that I'm in charge of. I established this department 5 years ago, almost 5 years ago, and especially to protect these infrastructures in Israel, and we focus on protecting especially ICS system and OT network. As a result of our activities, about a year ago, we introduced a new cyber regulation for industrial plants in Israel and critical infrastructure. We also developed a new methodology that supported it. The methodology was developed through my in-depth fieldwork that I done in some pilots in factory in Israel. And I still visit factories at least 2 or 3 times a week to guide, to monitor and enforce cyber protection requirements. To the best of my knowledge, the cyber guide we developed is the first one of its kind in the world. It's very unique because it's very specific to ICS and OT system, and that the request of the OECD has also been translated into English. So anyone who wants can download it from our website, or I can send me an email and get the PDF format from me for free. Thank you.
Thank you, Yosi. Dr. Jassim, would you like to add something to that?
Yeah, assalamu alaikum. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Well, let me give you from a different perspective why cybersecurity has been different post-pandemic and moving forward. We all agree with what you said, Hamid, that you know, the attacks could also be more of human behaviors and how the humans behave in terms of defense or in terms of attack. So that becomes known, and then we know all the hackers are coming from certain countries, entities, or locations. But the whole landscape is changing because of the machine learning and AI. Now, you mentioned the NSA's or FBI's recent attacks that's happening around the world or in the US. Sometimes it takes months to identify where were the originators of those attacks. And that's for very one valid reason, because actually the attackers were not humans, or at least the humans were behind it, but those all machine learning and AI constructed attacks. They were those that monitors billions of data and the patterns over period of time and then constructed those attacks. So, and the biggest mistake that's happening in the industry that we're still using and investing, with all the respect, on human and traditional defense systems to protect our environment or critical infrastructure. You cannot put the human intelligence against the machine intelligence and try to balance it and try to be on the defensive side. That's why it's becoming more weaker and weaker. And looking at many of the developed security tools, although they speak about artificial intelligence embedded within their solutions, and I believe more to be very transparent, those are for marketing purpose than actual technical purposes, because the amount of artificial intelligence used on those is very much to do as you use them in a just for instance the ICs on your mobile phone, but not the intelligence that you require to defend you. And that's because you require the overall and the overhaul of the entire systems that is used today in the defense. And to do that, you need to start with the algorithms, starting from the scratch. And that's the huge investment that the newer newer generated companies are more in front line than the traditional ones, because they don't want to reinvent the wheel right from the beginning. So that's why I will come back and explain it a bit more. And I think the focus in future will be more of an AI-enabled, AI and ML-enabled defense systems rather than the human and how the human is defending our critical infrastructure.
Thanks for those points. Some really interesting perspectives that's been shared from both of our panelists. Now, even if you look at the way the landscape changes, as Dr. Jasim said, even the industry has adopted a different way of referring to this. We refer to this as cyber-physical realm now, purely because of the overlap, between both of these worlds, which traditionally, industrial control systems were always traditionally seen as closed-loop, air-gapped. I put that in quotations. And also a big emphasis on physical and facility security. And fast forward, we now are dealing with the digital twins and a lot of those elements, which has completely changed the game. And as Dr. Jasim said, the attackers are not necessarily humans using tools. It's tools being driven by humans at a very advanced level of capability and capacity. And to Yoshi's point, the end impact of all of that could be a threat to human life and safety. Now that brings me to an interesting segue, and you mentioned about the emphasis being invested on the human element. We know that a lot of aspects when it comes to managing our security programs and risks effectively and efficiently plays around how we can leverage existing tools, techniques, and intelligence. In your experience, how easy is it for security teams to redesign or capitalize on current IT security controls for OT environments?
Okay, if we're talking about people, process, and technology, I think that my opinion is a little bit different. Of course, all of three are important, but because safety is the most important things in industrial control system, as we said, I guess that the people is the most important issue, and I explain why. We're talking about employees on the production floor who are less aware of cyber issues, and their mistake can cause a cyber incident that will lead to harm to public health. In addition, in my opinion, the internal threat is the most dangerous threat that we have in the factories. Therefore, we have to be aware of disgruntled employees that have the physical access to the plant infrastructure. They have the logical permissions, and they also have the motivation to make a huge manage. On the other hand, when we're talking about people, we should also make sure that there are more experts in the field of cyber protection of critical systems. As much as I see in the factories, there is a lack of experts in this field. One of our challenges is to carry out their training to increase cyber resilience in their industry. I myself set up already 2 cyber courses for the industry with the cooperation of the MAI in Israel. It's the Manufacturer Association. It was a great success. And therefore, soon, this coming November, a 3rd course will be start. I start another course. In each course, I have about 50 students from the production floor of critical factories. In terms of technology, it's very important. Machine learning and AI and all this kind of new technology, but it should be understood that technology costs money, and as a regulator, I'm the regulator of hazardous materials industry in Israel. We are very considerate of the cost benefits to the plants. We don't want any plants to go, bankrupt because of cyber defense expenses. Therefore, we are more focused, especially on standards, procedures, guidelines, and try to make a lot of efforts to improve and fine-tune existing technology.
Thank you. So I gather from the way you put the priorities, you're seeing people first, then process, and then technology. I'll be really interested to see what Dr. Jasim has to say about that, just picking up his previous answer.
I'm sure we are very different in our...
if you allow me to say, I'm not a people's believer. So if you put it that way to start with, I believe the whole loop is because of the people, internal, and the people who design, the people who put processes, So yes, the processes are failed because of the people, and the technology is failed because of the people and because what they do. So if I put it back, you know, and I'll put back the question or the statement about the cost benefit, and that's obviously in AI machine learning is one of the hot topics. Now, if you consider the cost of, just let's take the cost, I'm not talking even about the damages done because of the attacks, the cost of the people who manages your security infrastructure, the cost of the training, because the people need to be trained, certified, developed, the cost of the losing your expertise because there is a demand, let's say, on the security expertise, etc. And now that by itself paves off the way to put something more realistic in place. Now, the good thing about machine learning is you don't have to prepare people to hand over, to lose the experienced people, to use expertise. Because what it does self-learning and self-development. And as data grows, and as it experiences the various scenarios, it learns by itself to develop, to reach to a stage of the perfection. Now, one thing, you know, I must highlight here, and this is not only a security, and even in education systems today, not only, and I don't want to go out of the subject, but not only the robotics are replacing the teachers, but they're replacing handling the syllabuses. And this is the same things. The processes are generated by AI as we experience the developments. It updates itself as it fetches the data from the big data as we develop and go on every second. So you progress and you reach the perfection, but in terms of the human, you progress and you come with the error. So for me, the technology, if you even put it in future, and this is something I'm talking about, but not necessarily applicable today. And then maybe the gentleman is talking about what's happening in the current scenario, which could be very right. I'm saying this is how we should prepare ourselves for the future and for what we should plan, and even for the organizations who would like to. It would be much easier for the startups than those which have matured.
Right. So it's a completely contrasting perspectives and very interesting. So Dr. Jassim's gone with a tech first that drives the process that eventually leads the people or the human. Really, really interesting. And, you know, in fact, there was a survey done in late 2019 by SANS purely around ICS and the impact of the weaknesses around the liveware or the humanware. And interestingly, the numbers came back saying that 67% of incidents in the industrial control or the OT environment has come in from people being the weakest link. So I think we still have quite a big way to go. And you never know, you probably find the midway point where tech and humans work hand in hand and sort of offset that gap within awareness, and then eventually adaptation to ensuring that even our ICS infrastructure is as secure and the level of maturity that we achieved on the enterprise side. Now, it's interesting you spoke about big data, machine learning, and then I'll add to that cloud and IoT, which is essentially what we lovingly call Industry 4.0. So with that being an increasingly a part of the offerings that even manufacturers of industrial systems are now offering. So I've personally come across a lot of the OEMs now proposing reporting and monitoring using with the power of big data and cloud. And when it comes to bringing intelligence to the edge, IoT is getting smarter, and even the connectivity coming to the edge. Now, if you talk to someone who is a very traditional classic industrial control operative, you'd be giving him a shock, because these are all big taboo words when it comes to opening up that safe and secure space. In your respective areas of expertise and experience, what would you say is that one big game changer that is going to come about from all of this proliferation of Industry 4.0 into traditional OT?
I just want to clarify, I'm not against innovation, on the opposite. I like technology. I'm a technology guy myself, a hands-on guy. But we have to treat it well because, you know, it's kind of the chicken and the egg. If you have disgruntled employee in your factory, doesn't matter what technology you put, it will break the system. And we know that most of the breaches come from the inside threat. If we're talking about in terms of innovation, so we understand that the innovation is actually increases our exposure to cyber attacks. On the other hand, it's necessary to sustain and promote the industry. That's okay. So I guide myself, the industry. Do not hesitate or be afraid to adopt innovation. You can adopt innovation, AI, and machine learning, but we ask them to implement appropriate control in order to increase cyber attack, in order not to increase cyber attack surface. We know that Industry 4.0 revolution brought us a lot of IoT devices, components to the factory. And unlike the IoT components we have at home, like smart vacuum cleaner or smart air conditioner, in factories we see machines talking to each other in TCP protocols. And they also communicating out to the cloud, to the internet, and it exposes us to new threats that we need to address. Therefore, I'm as a regulator, additional cyber protection requirements to this technology, such as we require the factory to understand exactly what the agreement with the cloud and what the cyber protection solution the cloud provides. In default mode, the cyber protection that the cloud provides is not enough for us, and we demand basic protections like encrypted communication, smart identification, protection in all network layers, including the application layer, layer 7, maybe using WAF, Web Application Firewall, protecting the database layer by DAF, database firewall, and so on. We also required every plant to get hardening instructions from the IoT device manufacturer. And we demand them to implement all recommended instructions in order to reduce the exposure surface for cyber attack.
Thank you, Yosi. And Dr. Jassim, before we get to the answer, just a quick time check. We just got a couple of minutes left on the clock. So.
Sure, very quickly, look, one of the, I agree that one of the threats that's coming to the industry is because of IR 4.0, and it's basically because of the IoT. And if you go back to it, it's because of the sensors. Now today you have over 4 to 5 billion sensors. That's more than the human being. So these sensors are all the loopholes. Now, yeah, edge computing will bring the devices closer to the computing. In a way, you would say, well, it's maybe safer than the cloud computing. But on the other hand, it encourages more of, if you say, unregulated, unchecked sensors, that because of the reduction in the cost, they get increased automatically. So, you know, we should go more on the smarter sensors, secure sensors, and what we call it, the soft sensors that are coming on the place. So that's probably will be tackled differently on IR 5.0, especially for the industry.
Yeah, I mean, spot on, because I think today we come to a place where the technology is ahead and the security bit is having to be forced to be bolted on. And as you rightly said, the next iteration of this will most likely have this baked in. Some really amazing points, gentlemen. I know we just got a few more minutes on hand. Can I ask each of you to sort of sum up a 1-minute takeaway for our audience, just from your perspective, backgrounds, and some of the points you've shared today?
Okay, I summarize in 50 seconds. To summarize, I think that the cyber community need to pay more and more attention to the world of OT and ICS, not only IT, in order to raise the resilience of the critical plants in our countries. It is important to understand that this industries provide us with essential services to every one of us, like drinking water, electricity, and more. We done it with right, do that, but by a new regulation, a new methodology, which I spoke about earlier, in order to increase the cyber resilience of critical plants. It is also, in my opinion, it's also important, very important, to take care of human resources and train more and more cyber experts in the field of industrial control system, because we must to be ready for any kind of cyber attack in our essential resources. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Asim.
I don't want to just reverse his answers and say that's my answer, but but in any way, I think that my advice is to the bigger corporations, governments, and manufacturers, and not at this stage to the SMEs, is to start looking at your defense through the eyes of AI and ML and invest this, because this is the future. If you don't do it today, you will do it tomorrow. Security devices, security solutions are not cheap, they are expensive. So, and usually the return on investment are, multi-years. So if you're doing an investment on something that it could go away and that has loopholes, I believe it's a time to work within the organization, because that gives you the ability to customize it with those people who develop an algorithm, of course, not a biased algorithms, something that fits them, and develop a solution that will keep human monitoring rather than interacting on a daily basis. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. And for my minute, I'll just leave you with the 3 I's. So the first one would be insight. You really can't fight and protect against what you can't see or what you don't know. So insight is quite crucial. We need to understand what's happening in our environment. Intelligence is the second I. It's all about defining context. So everything can look threatening or everything can look safe. So unless we are able to plug in the visibility to the intelligence, it really won't make useful. It won't become a useful resource for us as security practitioners. And the last thing I would say is innovate, which is look at advancements in technology, advancements in thought process, the likes of machine learning and AI, as Dr. Jasim alluded. Bringing all 3 together, that should hopefully, give us that, level of agility and adaptability that, this topic was all about. Again, thanks to all my co-panelists. I think it was a really interesting session, times contrasting, but I think that was the purpose of having the panel. If all of us nodded to the same point, I don't think we'd be giving much back to the audience. And again, thanks to the audience and to the organizers for the time and the slot. I wish you all, a rest of, a good rest of the day and a safe day, and enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you both, and good moderation.